Right. This video is like, and by the way, I am loving the fact that I now have a webcam to record these videos. Doing so with the camera was time consuming and annoying, and the files were always huge. This is so much better. I am so getting a webcam for making these videos. Oh, I'll finally be able to make them now. Anyways, this is a video rebutting the idea that's floating around recently that, Thunderfoot, I remember saying, if it were not for the Catholic Church and religion and all that kind of thing, Columbus would have been walking on the moon instead of discovering America. And I just think, no. I mean, even during Roman and Greek times, we weren't developing very good seacraft. The Vikings managed to do it, but they failed due to economic reasons, not due to religious ones. I mean, the Viking kingdoms just got absorbed and they settled down and things like that. It's a foolish idea just to think that, somehow that we have all this super powerhouse not for Christianity. I mean, the Romans, for one, they had access to steam. I mean, here are Alexander in the Hellenistic period around 340 BC, something like that, maybe around the 330s BC. Around that period, he had demonstrated steam. Was there this sudden expansion of steam power? No. Was it because he was repressed by religion? No. Why was it? One, people didn't understand what the hell he was doing. That's my guess. Two, and especially in the Roman case, why not? Because there are tons of slaves that can do your work for you. It's cheaper, it's easier, and it doesn't require any more effort. That doesn't mean that the Romans didn't have several labour-saving devices, because no matter what, there are some things that a giant amount of expendable labour just can't achieve, and you do have to innovate eventually. But what the Romans had worked for the Romans. They had steam, and they had knowledge of steam and vacuum power, is what my understanding is. And they used it to, open a temple door, but it never went beyond that. And I can't comment whether or not there was a systematic attempt by Christianity to ban things like that, but I find myself doubtful that it was. I really do. I mean, a lot of the laws that we associate, these moral laws that we associate, being this religious influence of Christianity and things like that, is not true. I mean, we had, for example, Augustus Caesar, the Augustus Caesar, the one who, came out over Mark Antony and all that kind of thing. I think it's the same guy. I could be wrong on this one. He introduced a law banning adultery. I don't know about you, but Christianity existed at that point, or at least Judaism, but something tells me the laws would not have trickled all the way to the central power of Rome. No, the Romans pretty much had the Israelites under lock and key. Well, not really lock and key. The Israelites have been a pretty bubbly bunch since time immemorial. Until the Romans finally got fed up with them and just came in and slaughtered a very large percent of them and sent the rest of them around Europe. Or at least that's what I think happened. I'll have to find out some of the time. The point is, the point is quite obvious that I'm actually trying to make. It's that it's not Christianity or religion suppressing science. You do hear period, and that's not to say there is not truth to the statement, and I'll go into it, at least what I think, a bit after I make my main point. And my main point is that the main cause of the decline of all this knowledge and scientific development is the decline of the Roman Empire itself, due to the fact that it got overrun by the Goths and the Huns and the Franks and countless other tribes during this. The fact is, the Huns moved in from the steppes of Russia and things like that. They displaced other people who displaced other people, and it created this domino effect which pivoted itself on the Romans. It also didn't help that they had been in decline due to larger, disasters like military battles, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, which drained them of manpower and debasement of currency, political squabbles. No event ever happens in isolation, and no single cause. It's very rare that one very single thing will cause, this massive collapse. It's usually steps, and it's usually multiple factors which contribute to one result. But just to give you an idea of why I think that about the Romans, I mean, there's a lot of things about history I'll admit I'm not as good at than others, but there is one thing I do know about the Romans, is that they had one of the most disciplined armies in the world. And what is significant, it's not just most disciplined, one of the best equipped. The Romans, as far as I know, were the only army of civilization in history to equip their men systematically in metal armor. This may not seem like a very significant thing, but that just didn't happen. In the Celts, mail armor was fairly rare. My understanding of the writers, I think, state that they were very rarely armored. You didn't see gleaming lines of mail-clad Celts and things like that. You didn't even see. You had the hoplites were very heavily armored, but that's about it. When you get to people like the Romans, though, you had legion after legion after legion after legion after legion, kitted out in segmentata and hamata and squamata, and all those different armors. Everyone from the highest officer to the lowest legionnaire. Some auxilia may not have had that much armor because they simply didn't need it, but pretty much everyone who even would have closely required some armor had armor. This is not an insignificant thing, because it takes extremely high amounts of logistics and central planning to require that much resources. That said, that doesn't necessarily require a high amount of scientific development. That just means you need to have lots of resources. But to be able to do that, and have the money and the ability to do all these advanced things, is the same reason they were so successful in the military. And some people will say it is due to numbers. True. But the fact that they were so heavily equipped, every single legionnaire, and there were close to 200,000 legionnaires at one point, all kitted out in metallic armor with metal helmets and shields and gladii and pila, which were not quite, how do I say this, expendable, but if they really broke one, I don't think they would have had it. Excuse me. Hesitate over it, quite frankly. So that's pretty much it. It's due to that loss of the Roman Empire which caused this massive collapse, and none of the civilizations which replaced the areas which the Romans ruled were able in themselves to be able to do this, to be able to replicate that, because they were just small kingdoms, they were small little tribes and things like that. And that's not to say religion doesn't have a bad rap for a good reason. We had examples in the Byzantines during the 700s to around 900 to 1000 AD, causing massive destruction, closing down the schools of Aristotle and Socrates, which had been around since the ancient days, and they just closed them down largely for reasons of just saying they were heretic. There may have been some other reasons behind it, but for once, was mostly religiously and spiritually motivated, which is pretty freaking annoying. So, religion is not exactly given, how do I say this, the best, they have their problems, but they're not exactly the monster that some people make them out to be. that's just what I think. If you want to correct me, write a comment, whatever. I think I'm going to be off to bed, but maybe I'll make one more video. We'll see.